Mandela Monument is in front of the South African Embassy on Massachusetts Avenue. It serves as a reminder to politicians, as well, including the Vice President and other important officials in DC, who pass it every day, to not oppress people and to not allow the struggle of the majority to be forgotten. It's a very special place for the movement because in the 80s, many Americans who opposed the apartheid joined together to demonstrate their opposition. The statue itself is in front of the South African Embassy. Nelson Mandela was a freedom fighter who opposed the apartheid in South Africa. He was a prominent lawyer before he became heavily engaged and ended up being arrested for 27 years. The image of the statue is after the first time he is basically breathing free air after 27 years, and it actually, this is a model of the statue, the original statue, which is outside of the prison that he had been imprisoned in.
There's Mr. Mandela, Mr. Nelson Mandela, a free man taking his first steps into a new South Africa.
The apartheid movement was essentially a way to oppress the majority and allow the Dutch descendants to rule, even though they were in the minority. The anti-apartheid movement has many similarities to the American Civil Rights Movement because they had segregated society. They had to overcome great opposition. However, South Africa has now kind of made peace with their past, and they really joined together. After apartheid ended, Mandela became actually president of the country, which was a major unifying force, unlike here. So the statue serves to remind Americans of the possibility that we can actually end the tensions and we can fix our racial relations in the country.
On one of the plaques on the monument reads a quote from Mandela's address to a joint session of Congress in 1990. "The stand you took established that here we have friends, fighters against racism who feel hurt because we are hurt, who seek our success because they too seek the victory of democracy over tyranny. I speak of the millions of people throughout this great land who stood up and engaged the apartheid system in struggle. Let us keep our arms locked together so that we form a solid phalanx against racism. Let us ensure that justice triumphs without delay." This quote highlights what Mandela dedicated his life to, achieving justice for all races.
The monument is 9 feet tall and representative of the monumentous moment of the release of Mandela and his compatriots. On the front of the monument, the words "freedom fighter" links Mandela to other famous leaders who risked everything for what they believed in, like Martin Luther King Jr., George Washington, Gandhi, and Cesar Chavez.
There hasn't been much controversy specifically aimed at the monument itself, largely because Mandela is no longer viewed as a figure of dissent, but rather a heroic freedom fighter. However, there has been some debate over the appropriateness of the size of larger-than-life statues. Critics, such as Stanford professor Grant Parker, argued that such large statues are not fitting for commemorating historic figures because they command too much power.
Especially in DC, it's like on everyone's mind, like freedom, fighting for it, different cultures, different backgrounds. So I think even today kind of represents what we're going through. So maybe that would be my emotion, what it represents and how it motivates today. So
it made me feel like revolutionary.
Fight what matters the most to you and your country, your background. That everyone should have the same kind of privileges and opportunities, obviously.
The visual is a statue of Nelson Mandela. The written element are the adjectives freedom fighter, political prisoner, and statesman. These are all words that are not only used to describe Nelson Mandela, but also some of the things he was able to accomplish and stand for throughout his lifetime. Both the visual and written elements intertwine because both reflect one another. The statue itself is very powerful, demonstrating Mandela in triumph with his hand held high in a fist, which doesn't necessarily represent power, but instead reflects his freedom. Since he had been in prison for so many years, which made him a political prisoner charged with sabotage against the government, Nelson Mandela was seen as a statesman because he was a very respected figure.